Welcome to a very special edition of the Mental Space podcast, live here at the 5th Abu Dhabi Integrated Mental Health Conference. And once again, we're here tearing away the silence of mental health. Now, my first guest today, and we're going to be talking to many people at the conference today, is an inspiring individual who has a compelling story to tell. Please welcome to the podcast, Dr. Ahmed Shatila. Now, Dr. Ahmed, first of all, just tell our audience what you do.
First of all, thank you, Scott, for having me today. How are you doing? You doing well?
I'm doing really well. We've just come off stage and we've just had a conversation in front of the live audience. And I'm super inspired and I can't wait to share your story with our audience. So you've been working as a specialist in neurology at Sheikh Shakhbout Medical City. But there's so much more to your story about that. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm a neurology consultant at Sheikh Shakhbout Medical City. I was born and raised in the U.S., did my medical school in Detroit at Wayne State University, did my undergrad at Wayne State University, did my residency and fellowship at Wayne State University. So I like stability. And I've been here now for 12 years. I'm an adult neurologist who specializes in EEG and EMG, neurophysiology. But I also manage one of the largest MS clinics in the country. And that's a little bit.
You have a lived experience that shapes your path towards that. Just tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yes, so I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was a first-year medical student. And while I always wanted to become a doctor, I didn't really know what type of doctor I wanted to be. I was in medical school, and you kind of develop, you know what you want to be when you see other fields, you know what I mean? Now, people may go in saying, I want to be a surgeon, I want to be a pediatrics doctor, but that can change. For me, I just wanted to be a doctor. And I didn't really know much of neurology until I had to witness it firsthand. I got diagnosed with MS in my first year of medical school, and that shaped the way my whole career has changed because of that. I did neurology because I have MS. I opened up an MS clinic in order to help change or advocate for people with chronic illness and disability. And throughout on the path, I learned a little bit about myself as well.
Before we get to that, for any of my audience that don't know about multiple sclerosis, just talk us through, how did you discover that you had that condition? How did that show up? What are the symptoms that people who live with multiple sclerosis that they deal with on a day-to-day basis?
It's a great question, and it's probably one of the hardest questions to answer, and I'll explain why. So multiple sclerosis has actually been around for hundreds of years. If you go back to the 1300s, there are stories of people who have symptoms that we would look back at now and say, oh, this person probably had multiple sclerosis. But it really wasn't until 1868, until a French physician named Jean-Martin Charcot, he coined the phrase, une plaque sclérotique. I don't know French, and that's the most French you're going to get. But basically, multiple plaques. So he was the first person who put these symptoms under one name.
Okay.
Now, what's happening with people with MS? In a way, it's an autoimmune disorder, meaning your body is attacking itself, but we don't know why. And what is your body attacking? It's attacking something we call myelin. Now, for those of you who are not a biology background, myelin is the insulating cover of nerves. So if you think about your brain as billions and billions of telephone wires, right? And if you start stripping away at the wires, what'll happen? You get a short, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens in MS. Your body is attacking the insulation of these connections. Connection from one side of the brain to the other. Connection from your brain, let's say, down your spinal cord. It attacks any place where there is this connection
Yeah.
in your brain and spinal cord. So what are the symptoms? It can be anything.
Yeah.
What do I mean by anything? Depending where the area of your brain that's getting attacked, that's the area that you're going to have symptoms. If it attacks your optic nerve, you'll have visual problems. And if it attacks the areas that are coordinating balance, you may have problems with balance or visual problems, double vision, paralysis, weakness. So there is no one thing that says, if you have A, B, and C, you have MS.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so hard, because no two MS people have the same disease. And so it's really hard to say, to come up with a list of what are typical symptoms. But what do we do know? We do know that there are certain trends. It is a predominantly a female disease. 2/3 of the people are women.
Okay.
And if we go further, they're young women. The majority of the people affected with MS are between the ages of 20 to 40. You can have outliers, you can have older, and you can have younger, but I would say the majority, young women.
Okay. For you, tell me about your journey then. How old were you when you discovered this, and how did it show up in your life?
I was around 21 years old. I was a medical student, and what it showed up with double vision. I remember like yesterday, it was around Christmas break in the US. I had a biochemistry exam coming up right before we go on break. And I'm studying in the library. It was like 12 at night because I exam. And I look at the clock on the wall, and I saw two clocks.
Okay.
Now it was like 12 o'clock at night at the time, and I just shook my head and said, "Oh, you're tired. That's probably why you're seeing double," because it went away. And then the next day, everything stayed double. And that's what started this journey to what's the cause? Why am I getting these symptoms?
Yeah.
What's MS? I've never heard of. I had heard of it, but I never knew anyone with MS. So it was a lot of discovering about an illness, learning about an illness, but also learning about yourself, of what might happen as a result of this illness.
So 21 years old, you have a vision of your life ahead, young, fit, healthy. That all changes, turns on a dime. How did that impact you? Like, in terms of your mental health, tell us how it manifested there, what you went through, and how you kind of came through that to learn about yourself.
In a way, it was almost devastating. I mean, you go back to when you're 20.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster, we say. You feel you're invincible.
It was a long time ago for me.
Right? It was yesterday. I'm only 22 now, right? I mean, but when we were in the early 20s, you think you're invincible.
Yeah.
You can do anything, everything, and then all of a sudden, someone slaps an illness in your face, and you can't fight it. You can't get rid of it. And what was more frustrating is that we didn't know much about it. And what do I mean we didn't know much? I remember one of the first times I was with the doctor, he was like, "Yeah, you have MS." I'm like, "Okay, will I be disabled?" He says, "You might, but you might not." "Okay. Will I die?" He says, you might not. We don't know." "Will the medicine work?" "You might not." So you leave this meeting and you're like, I don't know if I got answers. All I did was get more questions for something I had never heard of. And it was such a slap in the face to realize that you're not invincible.
Yeah.
You have to change. Something changed. You know what I mean? The world changed, and now you have to adapt to it.
That seems like a simple thing to say. I imagine it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. There's been ups and downs. I think there are times, I think anyone who lives with a chronic illness,
Yeah.
you're going to have your good times, you're going to have your bad times.
Yeah.
There's going to be days when you truly feel like there's nothing wrong with you. And there are days that you just wish the ground would crack open and swallow you because you're just so tired. And you get those days. It's in that way it's been a little bit hard because it's been a lot of ups and downs. You know, I always like talking, and we were talking about the stages of grief.
Yeah.
It's so important because we all go through these stages, the denial, the anger, the bargaining. You get depressed because nothing works. But then we finally accept. And for me, getting to that point of acceptance changed my life. Literally. I mean, and it's not a linear change. It's not like you point A to point B to point C. You're in denial, then you get angry, then you can go back to denial again, and then you add a little bit of depression. So you struggle with all these. But then the minute you accept it, you look back and you're like, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. And that's where I think if I could tell the younger Ahmed,
Yeah.
it's not that bad. Because it really isn't, because you learn so much about yourself.
What did you learn about yourself? I mean, the fact that you endured those times when things were difficult. What did that teach you? You know, and how did you navigate to that point where you can then look back and go, yeah, it isn't that bad? Because so often, whether it be a physical, whether it be chronic pain, whether it be mental health condition, we can, when we're in it, it feels like there's nothing more than that.
Yeah. You know, it's a really deep question if you think about it, because there's so many layers. What has it taught me? It's taught me patience. It taught me that not everything happens just because you want it to happen. Sometimes you have plans. Well, the world and life has other plans for you sometimes. It taught me empathy. It taught me to be, you can understand someone, but you understand them better if you are in their shoes.
Yeah.
By being in their shoes, so to speak, or in their wheelchair, I feel like I became a better person. I became a better father, a better husband. I have a great relationship with my children. I have 3 boys, and I look at what being sick has taught them. I have a 4-year-old, and he doesn't look at someone in a wheelchair as disabled. Sometimes he'll come and be like, Baba, let me help you get out of the chair. And so these are things, life lessons, I think any parent would like to teach his children.
Yeah.
And so I got that, you know what I mean? So it's taught me a lot of things, but I think the most important thing, it taught me who I really am. I discovered myself. I discovered that had I not been challenged, had I not been pushed, I'd probably still be a doctor, and I'd probably be a good doctor. But everything that came after that is because something pushed me to do these things.
Yeah.
And for me, I discovered that.
So, I mean, you give me goosebumps. For our audience, and I asked you this question on stage for the audience, which was, what would your call to action be? For people in their lives, what's the lesson it taught you that you would like to share with people?
There's what would I tell people, and I believe it, and I now tell a lot of my patients. There's a word in Arabic that you may know, the word alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah just means through the grace of God, right? But, and we're supposed to say it not just for the good stuff. We get happy if you get a new job.
Yeah.
You get married. Good things happen, alhamdulillah. But alhamdulillah also is when not good things happen in your life. You know, when you realize that the value of finding even the value of something not necessarily good or not necessarily what you even wanted, and then realizing that you can say alhamdulillah or thank you.
You can be grateful for it.
To be grateful for it gives you so much peace. And I'm not talking about this in regards to religion, or I'm talking to it as an idea of acceptance.
Yeah.
Once you come to that acceptance that you can say, thank you, it's not that bad, you'll be at so much peace, and everything seems like, why was it even a problem? But if you're not pushed, you will never appreciate those things. You'll never discover that you could do it.
We do seem to live in a world these days, and I know, like, I'm a parent. I've got a 9-year-old daughter who I want to protect from all pain possible. And we do seem to live in this world where we expect everything will be great for us all the time. For the Gen Zs and the Millennials, what would you have said to Ahmed when you were 21? You know, from your vantage point now, what piece of advice would you have given?
Life isn't always fair. Life doesn't have to be fair. Just because we want good things doesn't mean that you deserve it. You have to work for it. You have to earn. Like, no one is gonna, I'm a physician, right? But that doesn't mean that you will respect me just because of who I am. I have to earn that respect from you through my actions. And I would tell any young person, you have to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
You have to work hard. Nothing will come easy. And actually, the easy things are the things that probably don't mean much. You don't appreciate that. It's the things that are not easy. The things that you wish you didn't have are probably the moments that'll teach you the most about yourself. We all want our children to live happy, healthy lives. But in reality, you want them to get pushed to a certain level where they will be tested.
Yeah.
I'm always here, I tell my son, I'm always here to help you out. And I will help you out. I'm not going to deny you. But you're going to have to figure out your own path. I'll help you out for the big stuff, but try to figure out the little stuff. Right?
I could sit and talk to you all day, purely for my own mental health. But we do have a tradition on the Mental Space podcast, which is we ask the question, what does mental health mean to you? What does it look like?
In ideal terms, you would say mental health is a feeling of being happy, satisfied, content with where you are in your life and what you have around you, right? That would be like the basic definition. But in reality, most people don't have those things, right?
Yeah.
We live in a world where you don't get everything you have, and the circumstances aren't always what you want. And so the basic definition of what mental health is would fail if you were to look at any single person's. But yet they're happy. So mental health is being content, being satisfied, I think, with changing what you can, accepting or living with what you can't, and always have a vision of just because something isn't where you want it to be, doesn't mean you can't change it. You got to work for it. And maybe at that point you'll be happy. I mean, happy with yourself. I don't know if that's...
I think I'm getting, again, that feels like a mic drop moment. I am going to ask you one final question before I let you go, which is, What gives you hope?
I have hope that someday there will be a cure. Not just for MS, for anyone who suffers from a chronic illness, right? I mean, that's like, we want people to be healthy. But really what gives me hope is seeing people. People are inherently good with all of the problems that people face and with all of the bad news that we hear. People are still good. In their core, people are generally nice people. It's sometimes, I feel like circumstances lead them to do things that I myself may have done had I been in the same circumstance. Yeah. So I do believe in that inherent goodness. And I believe, and I have hope that maybe while I can't cure MS, I have hope that people with disability, people with chronic illness, will be viewed as equal.
Yeah.
To people who don't have MS.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things about the National MS Society. Yes, we are a society for people with MS, but I always like to say, take a step back. We are advocating for any person with disability, MS or non-MS, because our struggle is the same. What I want is what someone else who doesn't have MS also wants if they're in a wheelchair. We want recognition. We want to see that we're equal, whether it's at work, home, among the job, among our families, among our friends. And we want our kids to take this message that, you know what, being disabled doesn't mean you're useless, or being disabled doesn't mean you're weak. And that's what I try to show my kids. So that's the message of hope I have for people.
You are incredible. Dr. Ahmed, thank you for joining us on the Mental Space live here at the 5th Abu Dhabi Integrated Mental Health Conference. If you've been inspired as much as I've been inspired by this conversation, please remember we have our Tear Away the Silence campaign supported by Viatris. Subscribe to the podcast. Keep following us for more conversations like this. And just one more time, you're an amazing individual, Ahmed. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here today. I had so much fun because I feel like I'm just advocating for everybody. Everyone that's in my position would look and be like, I know the struggle. I've been in his shoes. Yeah. And that's why I enjoy doing these things, these stories and these interviews. So thank you for having me.
He keeps dropping mic after mic after mic. Dr. Ahmed, thank you.
Much appreciated. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.